Sergeant Ethan Turner sat in the dark room, listening carefully as the officer at the other end of the cum line spoke. He had just finished his routine patrol when the message came in. This was not a usual briefing. The Galactic Council had called him personally, and that meant something big was about to happen. "Ethan, we need you," the officer said, his voice tense. "The galaxy is on the edge of collapse. The Zarathian Empire is preparing to invade." Ethan straightened up in his seat, his heart racing. The Zarathian Empire was a name every soldier feared. Known for their ruthless conquests and advanced technology, they were the kind of enemy no one could stand against except, perhaps, humans. "What are we dealing with?" Ethan asked, his mind already racing through possibilities. "There's a device," the officer explained. "The core of destruction. It's a powerful weapon that can turn the tide of the war. But it's hidden deep within the heart of the Zarathian capital on their homeworld, Zereth." Ethan frowned. He'd heard rumors about the core of destruction, but no one had ever confirmed its existence. To say it was powerful was an understatement. With it, the Zarethians could wipe out entire fleets, entire planets. "How do we get to it?" Ethan asked. "You're going in alone?" the officer replied. "We don't have the luxury of sending in an army. You've got 1 hour. The moment we get confirmation that you've activated the core, we'll send in reinforcements." Ethan thought about the mission. 1 hour. 1 hour to travel across the galaxy, infiltrate the Zarathian fortress, and retrieve a weapon capable of destroying civilizations. It seemed impossible, but that was the job of a soldier, to do what others thought couldn't be done. "Understood," he said, his voice steady. "I'll get it done. Good luck, Sergeant Turner," the officer replied, ending the call. Ethan stood up, grabbing his gear from the table. He knew he had no time to waste. The Zarathians wouldn't wait. The galaxy was on the brink of destruction. He was the only one who could stop it. He made his way to the hangar where a small stealth ship awaited him. It was a sleek, dark vessel, built for speed and precision. It wasn't much, but it would have to do. The ship was designed to get in and out of enemy territory without being detected, essential for a mission like this. As he strapped himself into the pilot's seat, he looked over the control panel. The countdown timer on the ship's display blinked, showing the limited time he had before the galaxy would be lost. The Zarathian Empire had been terrorizing the galaxy for too long. It was time for humanity to show them what they were made of. The ship's engines roared to life, and the craft lifted off the ground. Ethan's eyes focused on the stars ahead. The mission was simple. Get to Zeroth, retrieve the core of destruction, and get out. But nothing was ever simple when it came to war, and he knew the Zarathians wouldn't make it easy. Back on Zerath, Empress Valise stood in her war room, watching the galactic monitors. Her empire was one of the most powerful in the universe, and she had no doubt it would remain that way. But there was a problem to humanity at first. She had thought the humans were nothing more than an inconvenience, a minor annoyance in the grand scheme of her empire's expansion. But now, the humans were starting to prove themselves as a real threat. The most recent reports from her spies in human space were troubling. Humans were smarter, faster, and more resourceful than they had ever given them credit for. "I don't like this," Valise muttered to herself, glaring at the live feed. "Of the human ship entering the system? Why would they send one soldier? Do they believe they can stop us?" Her advisor stood behind her, silent, knowing better than to speak unless spoken to. Valise was known for her sharp mind, but she was also notorious for her unpredictable temper. "Send word to my commanders," she ordered coldly. "If this human dares to approach the core, stop him at all costs. I want him alive. He might be useful for something later." "Yes, Empress," one of her commanders replied, bowing before leaving to carry out her orders. Valise remained in front of the monitors, staring at the screen as the human ship grew closer. She couldn't help but admire his courage. He had no idea what he was up against. "I'll see just how brave he is when he faces me," she whispered to herself, her lips curling into a dangerous smile. Back in his ship, Ethan felt the weight of the mission pressing down on him. His sensors beeped, signaling he was approaching Zereth's atmosphere. The planet was enormous, with its cities sprawling across its surface like a never-ending maze. He could already see the towering fortress that housed the core of destruction. It was massive, a monument to the power and pride of the Zarathian Empire. His ship's cloaking system activated as he entered the atmosphere. His heart pounded in his chest as the ship descended toward the fortress. He could almost feel the eyes of the Zarathians on him. He knew he was coming. They would be ready. Ethan gripped the controls tightly, his mind focused on the task ahead. He had 1 hour, couldn't afford any mistakes. As the ship neared the fortress, Ethan's thoughts raced. He had been in dangerous situations before, but this was different. This wasn't just about survival. It was about saving the galaxy from the Zarathian Empire. And he was the only one who could do it. "Here we go," he whispered to himself. The ship touched down in the shadows of the fortress, hidden from view. Ethan opened the hatch and stepped out, the cold air of Zarath hitting him. He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the mission on his shoulders. The countdown had begun. Ethan's boots crunched against the rocky ground as he made his way toward the entrance of the fortress. He knew he had to be quick. The guards would be on high alert, and if he wasn't careful, this mission would end before it even began. But as he approached the fortress, he couldn't shake the feeling that someone or something was watching. He turned quickly, but saw nothing. Just shadows in the distant hum of the fortress's defenses. He continued forward, his hand resting on the blaster at his side. He would do whatever it took to finish this mission. The fate of the galaxy rested in his hands, and he wasn't going to fail. The massive fortress loomed before Sergeant Ethan Turner. Its towering walls and sharp angles were designed to intimidate anyone who dared approach. The darkness of Zarath's night sky stretched above him, and he could feel the weight of the mission pressing on his shoulders. He had only 1 hour to get to the core of destruction, retrieve the device, and get out. Ethan knew that if he was caught, it would be the end of everything. The Zarathians would stop at nothing to protect their powerful weapon. But he was determined. He'd been through dangerous situations before, but this mission was unlike any other. The future of the galaxy depended on his success. His boots crunched softly against the rocky ground as he moved toward the fortress. Using every skill he had learned over the years, stealth was key. He kept to the shadows, moving quietly and swiftly. His heart raced, but his mind remained focused. There was no room for mistakes. The walls of the fortress were massive, nearly impossible to scale. But Ethan had a plan. Crouched low and reached into his backpack, pulling out a small handheld device. It was a grappling hook, a simple tool, but one that could make all the difference. With a quick motion, he activated it, and a thick rope shot out, securing itself to the top of the fortress wall. Ethan climbed quickly, the rope pulling him up with ease. He had practiced this maneuver countless times. The wall was steep, but he was a trained soldier. His hands gripped the rope tightly, and his feet pushed against the wall, bringing him closer to the top. As he reached the edge, he paused for a moment, peeking over to check for any guards. The last thing he needed was to be spotted now. Scanned the area carefully, noting the lights and movement inside the fortress. There were guards, but they seemed distracted. It was his chance. He pulled himself up and over the edge, landing silently on the roof. The fortress was massive, its many layers of security, designed to keep out any intruders. Ethan was well aware of this, but he wasn't just any intruder. He had trained for moments like this. He would succeed. Ethan quickly moved across the roof, his footsteps light and controlled. He reached the nearest ventilation shaft, the entrance hidden behind a row of large metal pipes. He crouched beside it and examined the controls. The entrance was locked, but a simple hack was all it took to override the system. The shaft opened with a soft hiss. Ethan crawled inside. The air in the shaft was cold and stale, but it didn't bother Ethan. He was used to this kind of work. As he crawled through the narrow space, he thought about the mission. The core of destruction was hidden deep within the fortress, in the heart of the command center. It wasn't just a weapon, it was the key to the Zarathian Empire's future. And Ethan was about to take it from them. The shaft twisted and turned, but Ethan's training kept him on track. He had memorized the layout of the fortress from the maps the Galactic Council had given him. It wasn't easy, but it was doable. He could do this. The countdown on his watch reminded him that time was running out. As he crawled forward, he suddenly heard voices. The sound echoed through the shaft, and he froze. He knew the guards were close. His pulse quickened as he listened to their conversation. "They say the human is close," one of the guards said. "Should we go to the main entrance and wait?" "For him? No," the other guard replied. "The Empress wants him alive. We'll capture him inside the fortress. He's been here long enough. Soon, the trap will be set." Ethan's heart skipped a beat. He knew the Zarathians were aware of his presence, and they were ready to catch him. He had to move faster. He pushed forward, the sound of his own breathing now loud in his ears. The shaft was almost at an end. He could see the light ahead, the entrance to the command center. If he could just make it there, he would be able to reach the core of destruction. The rest would be easy. But as he neared the exit, a loud crash echoed through the shaft. One of the guards must have seen the broken lock. Ethan cursed under his breath. They were onto him. He had to act fast. He burst out of the shaft, landing in the middle of a hallway. It was dimly lit, but he didn't have time to appreciate the surroundings. He dashed forward, his feet pounding against the cold floor. He had to reach the core before the guards caught up with him. Ethan's ears rang with the sound of footsteps. He turned a corner, only to be met by two armed Zarathian soldiers. They raised their weapons, but Ethan was faster. He dove to the ground, rolling to the side and pulling out his blaster. With quick precision, he fired, taking out both guards in a single shot. The bodies crumpled to the floor, their weapons clattering beside them, but there was no time to celebrate. The noise from the fight had already attracted attention. More guards were coming. Ethan grabbed a nearby wall panel and tore it off. It was a basic door control, but it was enough to seal the hallway. He slammed the panel into place, locking it just in time to hear the approaching footsteps stop. He stood there for a moment, catching his breath. The guards wouldn't give up so easily, but for now he had bought himself a little time. He turned and kept moving forward. The core of destruction was close. He could feel it. The battle wasn't over yet, but he was determined to finish it. As Ethan made his way deeper into the fortress, the sense of danger grew. He knew he was getting closer to the heart of the Empire, and Empress Valis would not let him reach the core without a fight. The tension was mounting and time was running out, but there was no turning back. This mission was humanity's last hope, and Ethan wasn't about to fail. Ethan's heart pounded as he moved deeper into the fortress. Every step he took brought him closer to the core of destruction. The walls around him seemed to close in, their cold metal surfaces reflecting the soft hum of the security systems. He kept moving, his footsteps light but deliberate, knowing that each moment he wasted could mean failure. The hallway stretched ahead, lined with high-tech doors and flickering lights. He could feel the eyes of the Zarathian Empire on him even. Though he hadn't seen a single guard since he'd taken out the last two, he was deep inside the fortress now, and there was no turning back. Suddenly, he heard something, a soft, almost inaudible sound, a faint clicking of boots against the floor. Ethan froze. His hand instinctively went to the blaster at his side. He crouched low, trying to blend into the shadows, his breathing slow and steady. From around the corner, a group of Zarathian soldiers appeared. They were tall and imposing, their sleek armor reflecting the dim lights of the hallway. They were patrolling, but their eyes were alert, scanning the area for any sign of intruders. Ethan's mind raced. He had only a few seconds to decide what to do. He could take them out quietly, but that would raise an alarm, or he could sneak past them, staying hidden long enough to get closer to his target. As the soldiers neared, Ethan made his choice. He pressed his back against the wall, holding his breath. The guards passed him by, unaware of his presence. His heart skipped a beat as one of them glanced toward his hiding spot. For a split second, it felt like the end, but the soldier turned away, continuing down the corridor with the others. Ethan exhaled slowly, his muscles tense with relief. That was too close. He waited a moment, then continued forward, his pace quickening. The core was just ahead. He could feel the pull of the mission, the weight of the galaxy's future pressing on him. He had no time to waste. The deeper Ethan went into the fortress, the more the security systems seemed to intensify. Automated doors slid open and shut, and strange noises echoed through the halls. He passed several more patrols, but he managed to stay hidden. Each time, the tension mounted, but each time, he got a little closer to his goal. As he rounded a corner, the walls opened up into a massive chamber. The room was filled with glowing blue lights and a strange humming sound. The air felt heavy, and Ethan knew he was near something important. His instincts told him that this was it. The core of destruction was somewhere in this room, but it wasn't just the core he had to worry about. There were guards everywhere. The room was filled with Zarathian soldiers, all focused on a central control panel. They weren't just standing guard. They were busy, working on something important. Ethan's eyes scanned the room. He needed to get close to the panel, where he knew the core was hidden. But the guards were too numerous, and there was no way he could take them all down without alerting the entire fortress. Suddenly, the doors to the chamber slid open, and a tall, imposing figure entered. Ethan's breath caught in his throat as he recognized the new arrival. It was Zarek, the commander of the Zarathian military. He was known for his brutal tactics and his intelligence in battle. Ethan had read about him in the reports from the Galactic Council, but seeing him in person was a different experience altogether. Zarek was a giant among his people, his armor gleaming and his presence commanding. The guards immediately stood at attention, their eyes focused on their commander. Ethan's hand tightened around his blaster. He knew that if Zarek spotted him, it would all be over. But he couldn't just sit here and wait. He had to act. Zarek approached the central control panel, his deep voice echoing through the chamber. "Have you located the intruder?" he asked. The soldiers looked at each other nervously. One of them stepped forward, nodding. "Yes, Commander. We've detected signs of a human infiltrator. We believe he's somewhere on this level." Ethan's heart sank. They knew he was here. The hunt had begun. Zarek turned to his troops. "Prepare a trap," he ordered. "I want him alive. We can't let him destroy the core." Ethan's mind raced. He couldn't let them capture him. Not now, not when he was so close. He had to get to the core, and he had to do it fast. He moved silently, staying in the shadows as Zarek and the guards began to set up their trap. The tension in the room was palpable. Ethan knew he couldn't waste any more time. With the core in sight, he had to act now. He dashed across the room, using the pillars and machinery for cover. His heart beat loudly in his chest, but he forced himself to stay calm. Each step brought him closer to the control panel. The core of destruction was just within reach. But then, as he approached the panel, something unexpected happened. A soft voice echoed through the chamber. "You think you can just walk in here and take what's mine?" Ethan froze, his hand going to his blaster. He turned slowly, his eyes locking onto the source of the voice. Standing at the far side of the room, framed by the glow of the control panel, was Empress Valis. The alien Empress was tall and regal, her dark eyes glowing with an intense, almost unnatural light. She was beautiful in a way that was both terrifying and mesmerizing. Her voice was calm, but there was no mistaking the danger in her words. Ethan's pulse quickened. He had been prepared for guards, for traps, but not this, not the Empress herself. "You're brave human," Valis continued, her eyes narrowing, "but bravery alone will not save you. You've come to take the core, but I won't let that happen." Ethan gripped his blaster tighter, his mind racing for a plan. But as he looked at her, he realized something. Valis wasn't just any ruler. She was a powerful leader, and she knew exactly what she was doing. Ethan had only one choice. He had to act fast, and he had to outsmart Herbie, because if he didn't, everything would be lost. As the tension in the room grew, Ethan realized that the real battle was only just beginning. He wasn't just fighting for the core anymore. He was fighting for his life and for the future of the galaxy. Ethan's heart raced as he stood facing Empress Valis, the core of destruction just a few feet away. Her gaze was sharp, her posture regal, and her presence filled the room with an unsettling weight. He had expected to face guards, traps, and security systems, but not her, the Empress of the Zarathian Empire. She was no ordinary opponent. "You've come all this way," Valise said, her voice calm yet full of an undeniable power. "You must be incredibly determined, human. But you're too late. The core belongs to my people." Ethan kept his hand on his blaster, trying not to let his nerves show. He knew this was at the final moment. The success of his mission depended on what happened next. He had one goal, and one goal only: activate the core of destruction. But with Valise standing between him and the device, things had become much more complicated. "I didn't come here for you," Ethan said, his voice steady, though inside his mind was racing. "I came for the core, and I'm not leaving without it." Valise studied him for a long moment, her dark eyes piercing through him. "You believe you can stop me? You're just one soldier? What hope do you have against the might of my empire?" Ethan's grip tightened around his blaster, but he didn't respond right away. He had learned over the years that talking in situations like these only distracted you. He focused on the core behind her, the massive, glowing device that hummed with raw power. It was beautiful, almost otherworldly, and it was humanity's only chance at stopping the Zarathians. "You've underestimated us," Ethan said, stepping forward, keeping his eyes locked on hers. "You see humans as weak as nothing more than ants under your boot. But you're wrong. We may be small, but we're not to be underestimated. We fight, we adapt, and we don't give up." Valise chuckled, a soft, almost mocking sound.
"Such
"Spirit. But spirit won't save you. You're surrounded, and you're outnumbered. My soldiers will be here soon. You can't win this." Ethan didn't reply. He knew that talking wouldn't change anything. He had to act. His mind worked quickly, calculating his next move. The core was still some distance away, but if he could keep her distracted for just a little longer, he might be able to activate it. The problem was getting past her. He was alone, injured, and there was no backup. "I don't need to win," Empress Ethan finally said, his voice low but filled with determination. "I just need to make sure you don't win." Valise's eyes narrowed, and for the first time, Ethan saw a flicker of doubt in her expression. She hadn't expected him to speak so boldly. She stepped closer, her boots clicking against the floor with each step. Ethan's instincts screamed at him to be ready. "I admire your courage," Valise said, her tone suddenly softer. "It's misplaced. You've already lost. The core will remain mine, and soon your people will be crushed under my empire's boot." "You underestimate us again," Ethan said, shaking his head slightly. He could see the soldiers approaching, their footsteps echoing in the hallway. He had to move, and quickly. Without warning, Ethan lunged forward. His hand shot out, and in one smooth motion, he grabbed a small device from his belt. It was a flashbang, a simple but effective tool designed to temporarily blind and disorient an enemy. He hurled it toward Valise, the device exploding in a bright, blinding flash of light. For a split second, the room was filled with a brilliant light and everything went silent. Valise cried out in surprise, her hands shielding her eyes from the intense flash. Ethan didn't waste a second. He darted toward the core, reaching the control panel in just a few strides. The guards were still too far away, and Valise was still recovering from the flash. Ethan's fingers flew over the control panel, working to override the system. He didn't have much time. He could hear the soldiers rushing toward the chamber. If he didn't act now, the core would be locked down, and he'd be trapped. His mind raced as he typed in the override code. The system beeped, and the core hummed louder, as if it recognized that it was being activated. He could feel the immense power pulsing through the room, and the weight of his responsibility bore down on him. If he failed, everything would be lost. "Stop him," Valise screamed, her voice full of rage. Ethan glanced over his shoulder, seeing Valise stumbling toward him, her vision slowly returning. She wasn't going to give up without a fight, but she was too late. The countdown had begun. "Goodbye, Empress," Ethan muttered under his breath as the core activated. A wave of energy spread from the device, shooting through the room in a blinding pulse. For a moment, everything seemed to freeze. The entire fortress shook, and Ethan could feel the immense power of the core rippling through the air. He had done it. The core was now active, and there was no going back. Vela staggered back, her eyes wide in disbelief. Flickered, and the entire structure of the fortress seemed to groan under the pressure of the core's power. The shockwave of energy would disable the fortress's defenses and disrupt all of the Zarathians' technology. "You fool," she shouted, her voice trembling with fury. "You've doomed us all." Ethan didn't flinch. He had one goal now: escape. The energy pulse would disable the Zarathians' technology, but it wouldn't destroy everything. They would still be able to fight back, but this was a major blow to their forces. Ethan turned and ran toward the exit. He could hear the soldiers approaching. He was running out of time. But he knew that for the first time in this war, humanity had finally gained an advantage. As he sprinted through the hallway, the walls shaking around him, he heard the sound of Valise's voice again, this time quieter, but filled with raw emotion. "Human," she whispered, more to herself than to anyone else. "You've truly changed the galaxy. But this is not the end. You have no idea what you've started." Ethan didn't slow down. He had no choice but to keep running. The battle wasn't over yet, but this was humanity's first victory. Ethan's heart pounded as he sprinted down the dark corridors of the Zarathian fortress. The core of destruction was now activated, but he knew that the true test had just begun. The shockwave from the core's energy pulse had disabled the fortress's defenses and systems, but it wouldn't be long before the Zarathians recovered. His only chance of survival was getting out before they regrouped. The hallway shook with the aftershocks of the core's power. The lights flickered, casting long shadows that seemed to move with him. Ethan pushed forward, ignoring the pain in his side from earlier injuries. He had only one goal now: escape. He turned a corner, finding himself at a dead end. Fear and panic rose in his chest for a moment, but he quickly took a deep breath. He couldn't afford to panic. Not now. He turned around and spotted a narrow maintenance tunnel. It was barely wide enough for him to fit, but it was his only option. As he crawled into the tunnel, he heard the sound of heavy footsteps approaching. The Zarathian guards had finally started to react. Ethan's mind raced. He had no weapons left. His blaster was spent, and there was no time to waste searching for more supplies. He would have to rely on his wits and speed to make it out alive. The tunnel was dark and narrow, its walls covered in grime and dust. Ethan crawled as quickly as he could, his hands scraping against the cold metal surface. He could hear the sounds of the guards above him, their voices growing louder as they searched for him. He had to move faster. Minutes seemed to stretch on. For hours, as he crawled through the tight space, the seconds felt like they were slipping away, and with them, his chance for survival. Every time he heard a new noise above, his heart raced faster. He couldn't afford to be caught. Finally, the tunnel opened into a large chamber. The ceiling was high, and there were several exit points visible. As soon as Ethan emerged from the tunnel, he heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps approaching. He wasn't alone. He ducked behind a large piece of machinery, hoping to stay out of sight. His breath was heavy and shallow, his body tense with fear. He peeked around the corner and saw a group of Zarathian soldiers moving toward him. They were armed, their glowing eyes scanning the room as they searched for the intruder. "Where is he?" One of the soldiers growled. "Can't be far." Ethan held his breath. He was trapped. There was nowhere to run. He quickly analyzed the situation. The only way out was through the soldiers, but they were too well armed. He couldn't take them all on. Not now. As he crouched behind the machinery, his eyes flicked around the room, searching for an escape. That's when he saw a small control panel near the far wall. It was old and covered in dust, but it might be his way out. The panel controlled a set of heavy doors that led to a different section of the fortress. If he could make it to the panel and activate the doors, he might be able to slip away before the soldiers noticed. The problem was getting to it without being seen. He waited for the right moment, watching the soldiers move toward the center of the room. He could see the door panel in the distance, just out of reach. He could do this. He had to do this. As the soldiers turned their backs, Ethan made a dash for the panel. His feet pounded against the metal floor, and his heart beat faster than ever. The soldiers were still focused on the other side of the room, but he didn't have much time. He reached the panel and quickly keyed in the override code. The door to the next section of the fortress opened with a low, mechanical hiss. The soldiers spun around in surprise, but it was too late. Ethan was already through the door, running as fast as his legs could carry him. The corridor he entered was dark, with only the faint glow of emergency lights to guide him. He didn't know where the door led, but at this point it didn't matter. He just needed to get as far away from the soldiers as possible. His mind raced as he ran. He had no idea if the soldiers were following him, or if they would lock down the fortress before he could escape. All he knew was that he had to keep moving. As he rounded another corner, he saw a small hidden access hatch. He didn't hesitate. He pulled the hatch open and crawled inside, slamming it shut behind him. The small compartment was tight, but it provided him with a moment of safety. He was hidden, at least for now. Ethan's breath came in ragged gasps as he sat in the darkness. His body ached from the hours of running, crawling, and fighting, but he couldn't afford to rest, not yet. He had 1 hour to get out of the fortress, and every second counted. Through the hatch he could hear the sound of voices, distant but growing closer. The soldiers were still searching for him. Ethan knew that the moment they found him, they would overwhelm him. He couldn't let that happen. He had to finish what he started. He moved quickly, climbing through the cramped space, until he reached a small vent that led outside. No time to lose. He forced the vent open and crawled through, the cool air of the outside world hitting his face as he emerged. The fortress loomed behind him, its dark walls towering into the sky. Ethan took a deep breath. He had made it out. But his mission wasn't over. The core was still active, and the battle for the galaxy was just beginning. He had to get back to his ship. He could see the distant lights of the human fleet above him. Reinforcements were on their way, but he wasn't sure if they would make it in time. He didn't care. He had done his part. Now it was up to the rest of humanity to finish the job. But as he looked up at the sky, a thought crossed his mind. Empress wasn't finished yet. The Zarathian Empire wouldn't give up easily, and neither would she. This was only the beginning. Ethan turned toward the horizon, his body tired but his resolve stronger than ever. The future of the galaxy was still uncertain. But one thing was clear. Humanity had proven that it was not to be underestimated. Ethan's chest heaved as he stumbled through the rocky terrain outside the Zarathian fortress. His heart was still racing, the adrenaline from the mission still pulsing through his veins. He had done it. He had activated the core of destruction and escaped the fortress, but the mission wasn't over. The enemy was still out there, and now, more than ever, humanity had to face the consequences of their actions. His body ached, his muscles sore from the battle and the long, tense escape. But as he looked back at the looming structure in the distance, Ethan felt a sense of accomplishment. The fortress was now disabled, its systems crippled. The core's pulse had sent a shockwave through the entire facility, destroying vital communication, networks, and disabling Zarathian weaponry. The victory was significant, but it was only a small step toward defeating the Empire. Ethan's thoughts turned to the reinforcements. They had to be close. He had sent the distress signal before leaving the fortress. He could only hope that they would reach the planet in time. He paused for a moment, taking in the barren landscape around him. The silence was overwhelming, the only sound being the soft whisper of wind through the rocks. It felt strange, almost unreal, after the chaos he had just escaped. But he didn't have time to rest. The Zarathians wouldn't give up so easily. They would be coming for him. As if on cue, a low hum filled the air, and a shadow passed over him. He looked up to see a human shuttle descending toward the surface, its engines roaring as it landed. Nearby, the moment he saw it, a rush of relief flooded through him. Reinforcements had arrived. The shuttle door opened, and a team of soldiers rushed out. At their head was Captain Jessica Hayes, one of the most skilled officers in the galactic fleet. She had been part of the original rescue team that had come to Earth's aid, and her reputation for quick thinking and fearless leadership was well known. Sergeant Turner, Captain Hayes called out, waving as she approached him. "It's good to see you made it out in one piece." Ethan nodded, his voice hoarse. Just barely, Captain. I've activated the core, but the fight's far from over. The Zarathians won't give up. She gave him a stern look, her eyes sharp. We know. We've been tracking their movements. They'll regroup, but we're not giving them any time. The rest of the fleet will be here soon. Ethan felt a surge of hope at her words. He had been alone for so long, fighting the odds with nothing but his training and his will to survive. Now, humanity was finally rallying to stop the Zarathians for good. Captain Hayes turned to the shuttle crew. Get him to the med bay. Let's check on his condition, and then we move out. We have a lot of work to do. As Ethan was led to the shuttle, he felt his body begin to relax, the weight of the mission slowly lifting from his shoulders. The journey back to the shuttle felt long, but when he finally reached the med bay, he was greeted by a team of doctors and medics. They quickly assessed his injuries. Nothing too serious, just a few scrapes and bruises. But the exhaustion in his body was real. While the medics worked, Captain Hayes stayed by his side. She had been the one to lead the counteroffensive against the Zarathian forces years ago, and now she was leading the charge to finish what they had started. Ethan, she began, her tone serious, you've done something that no one thought was possible. The core is a game changer. You've set the galaxy on a new path. You can't afford to waste this opportunity. Ethan nodded, his mind still racing. I did what I had to do. But it's not over yet. The Zarathians will come for us. They'll try to take the core back. Captain Hayes placed a hand on his shoulder, her grip firm but reassuring. We're ready for them. The fleet's mobilizing, and we've already sent word to the council. At this time, we're going to end this war. We've learned a lot from the past. We're not underestimating the Zarathians anymore. Ethan sighed deeply, the weight of everything beginning to settle in. It was hard to believe that just hours ago he had been alone, sneaking through enemy territory, fighting against impossible odds. Now he was part of something much larger. The future of the galaxy was uncertain, but humanity had proven that they could stand against the most powerful empire in the universe. As the shuttle took off, Ethan looked out the window, his thoughts turning to Empress Velis. He had faced her once, but he knew this was far from over. She was powerful, smart, and ruthless. She wouldn't let this defeat go easily, but Ethan wasn't afraid. Not anymore. Humanity had shown its strength, and they were no longer the underdogs. They had the core of destruction, and they had the will to fight. The Zarathians might have the numbers, but humanity had something they didn't resolve. The shuttle soared through the atmosphere, heading back to the fleet waiting in orbit. The battle for the galaxy had just begun, but for the first time in a long while, Ethan felt a sense of hope. Humanity had proven its worth. Now they would finish what they started. As the stars stretched out before him, Ethan felt a strange sense of peace. The mission had been completed, but the real challenge was just beginning. But for the first time in his life, he knew that humanity was ready for whatever came next.